just us.
Yes, that's a good crowd.
Good.
I'm going to start with a question, and then I'll open it to the, to the
Great.
public. You have been wanting to make an adaptation of Henry Sugar for 20 years. And why it took so long to internally elaborate how you wanted to do it?
Well, you know, I got to know the Dahl family, I guess it is about 20 years ago, when we were doing Fantastic Mr. Fox. So that's the, you know, I think, in fact, I met Lissy Dahl, Roald Dahl's widow, while we were on the set of the Royal Tenenbaums. So that's maybe 2000. And while I was with her, I just thought, you know, I grew up loving Dahl's books, and Henry Sugar was one of my favorites all along, but I couldn't really see how to adapt it. And I kind of tinkered with it a few times, and it just, I just couldn't really see how I would do it. And so they held it for me. And Lissy stopped running the estate, and her grandson, Luke Kelly, took over. And he just kept it for me for many, many years, set aside, and every now and then we talk about it, and I say, I still don't know. And then one day, I just had a thought that really what I liked, what I wanted to keep from it was his language, Dahl's language. And I had a thought of a way to do it that was, that might be really based on his language, on actors and words, really.
I think we have a question there.
Thanks very much. Congratulations, Wes.
Thank
Stephen
you.
Schaefer here for the Boston Herald.
Hi.
The idea of doing a 32-minute movie is something not everybody gets to do. And one of the things is, how do you get people to see it? Or why spend your energy on a 32-minute movie when you might have to spend the same amount of energy and you could get a 90-minute movie?
Well, you know, what it was I wanted to do this story. And I guess when you know, usually most movies, I'm working on something that's from scratch. You know, I'm working on something now with Roman Coppola, who's here, and here's Roman. And, you know, we're starting with nothing. When you're adapting, you've got the thing in front of you. And so for me, I kind of want to do it as efficiently as it can be. Well, I can do this story pretty fast. It turns out. And I would say we made other shorts, you know, in the same kind of project. But I'll also say, you know, the shooting of this one, Henry Sugar, it must have been 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks or something. So it's not an undertaking like a feature film. In a way, it's almost more like a little theatrical presentation that we've found a way to film. I would say it doesn't quite exist. I don't know what form, how you would describe this one. It's somewhere in between theater and cinema, but it's a movie. Now, who's going to watch it? I don't know. You know, I mean, I don't know who wants to go. I don't know how many people want to go to a cinema for 40 minutes. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, for me, I want to go to the movie and dinner. You combine those together, that already adds up to a lot more, and, you know, we're busy. So I'm not so sure. I think there may be a recipe for something here. Yeah.
You mentioned theater and a film. That they often coexist in your work. Your work, the artifice in your work is always kind of stated up front. Yep. And what do you like about the construct?
Well, in a way, the thing that we think, you know, the artifice or theatricality, to me, sometimes that's, well, for me, that's often, I feel, reality, because much of the time when you make a film, you're trying to create the illusion of something. And I'm often drawn to the thing where you can see what the illusion is. You can see what they really did on the set, how the filmmakers created this moment, really. And it's almost like, for me, I think of it almost like stunts or something, like stunt work, like things that make a Buster Keaton movie magical. The thing that makes it magical is it really happened in front of the camera. In a way, I always think of it, every bit of dailies of a movie whether it's written or whatever way this thing was concocted, is a bit of documentary of whatever happened in that moment until you start messing with it, which I would say we mess with them a lot in post-production. But still, I love the idea of capturing something for real on camera and telling a story that way. And I guess my way of making it more real is to make it theatrical.
There's a question there.
So I'm curious, like, what you feel about the recent events as far as hiring sensitivity readers to remove passages from Roald Dahl's books, because I grew up with his books, I love them, but I'm not sure if that's an edifying course of action or not. So I'm curious how you feel about that.
You know, I'm probably the worst person to ask about this because, you know, if you ask me, should Renoir be allowed to touch up one of his pictures and modify it? I would say no. It's done. Somebody bought it. It's in a museum. I don't think even the artist. I don't want even the artist to modify their work. I understand the motivation for it, but I sort of am in the school where when the piece of work is done and we participate in it, the audience participates in it, we know it, and so I sort of think when it's done, it's done. And certainly no one who's not an author should be modifying somebody's book. He's dead.
I think we have a question.
Hi, Grandioso Federico. Can you talk to me about the background, passing from one scene to the other? There's this background who is folding and this technique. Yeah,
The movement of it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the film is very much like a play. It's very much about the words. It's about the performance of the words by these great actors. And so I tried to design a plan for how to stage the movie that is constantly evolving, but supporting speeches, talking. Supporting them, you know, much of the action in the movie, sometimes we see action that the actor is describing anyway. So really it's all a way of trying to animate a text cinematically. Or do you mean in terms of how did we make these things or something? Or did I answer the question or not really yet? I sort of answered it. It's good? Okay. I can do more if you need it. Okay.
Sì.
Hello, Maestro Mazzetto, I'm here.
Hello. Hi.
You are very precise and very evocative always with the music in your movies. How do you work on this project about the music, the soundtrack? How do you choose the...
On my movies? Well, you know, I think each movie has a different requirement or a set of requirements for everything, but for the music. I often work with Alexandre Desplat, who's a composer I've worked with for many years, and I love my collaboration with Alexandre. I work with Randall Poster, who is the music supervisor for my movies for 20-something years. Sometimes there's music that I might have in mind before we've even, while I'm writing, while we're working on the script. And sometimes there's music that comes in during the sound mix at the last possible minute. So it's a process that's always going on. And I think these Henry Sugar movies don't have much, this movie and the other ones, they don't really have much music at all. But the movie usually sort of tells you what it wants. I mean, the last one I did at Asteroid City, it has two kinds of music. It has sort of alien music that Alexandre did, that Alexandre and I worked on together, and it has song after song after song that's playing on radios and that exists in the space where the characters live. And that's the whole sound of the movie. Thank you.
She has a question.
Alison Boshoff from the Daily Mail.
Hello.
Congratulations on a really charming movie.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the very precise recreation of Gypsy House and the writing hut. Did the family have any input into the casting of Ray Fiennes, who made a terrific Roald Dahl?
Well, they didn't exactly. I mean, Luke, who was the grandson who was running the estate at the time, I sent him, he calls him Poppy. And, you know, he knew him as a little boy. And so Luke was excited and pleased when I sent him, here's Rafe in costume being doll. But I can't, but there wasn't a lot of collaboration on this one, I guess. Because also, by the time we were making the movie, the family had sold not just Henry Sugar, not just the movie rights, everything. So it's, you know, I was working with different group.
What do you think that Rafe would make a great Henry Sugar?
What made me think
Yeah.
so? Well, I guess, you know, one thing is, for this, it's a completely English cast. It all has to be people who you can hand not just paragraphs, but pages of text that they've got to perform. They've got to absorb it, and they've got to then make it so they can really play with it. So that limits the pool of people, although there's a high percentage of them in the English movie and theater world. But Rafe is somebody, I know Rafe for many years, and I've worked with Rafe before so extensively, and I knew Rafe would, essentially, he'd just take it away, and I'd be the audience. And that's the ideal thing, to be able to just, you know, sit there on the set and watch someone perform the movie. Yeah, that was, you know, I think to choose Rafe to be doll ultimately is just an instinct, but it's an instinct also. I also like to cast people who I already know. I mean, I love having people come back and kind of reuniting. So I was excited just to have Rafe with us.
There is a sense of reunion in the way that, you know, the cast plays with each other.
Yes.
And it's that, and that's also part of the theater idea, you know, to having this sort of company that kind of
Yes,
travels
and it is a company that, because in the other short films that eventually will add to this, the same cast is sort of swirled around. You know, we have Rafe, we have Benedict Cumberbatch, we have Richard Ayoade, we have Dev Patel, we have Ben Kingsley. They play different roles in different short films we made. And also Rupert Friend, who's not in Henry Sugar, but he's in 2 of the other ones that we made. So it is like a theater company. And some of them play multiple roles within one film.
Well, yeah, one film, yeah. There.
Hello, I'm David Martos from Spain, from Quinótico. I would like to ask you about the big topic of this festival, which is the strike. I would like to ask you about how you feel about the state of things now, and how do you feel about the Directors Guild reaching an agreement with the APTP while actors and writers are still striking? Thank you so much.
Yes, well, you know, I'm a member of both the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild for 20 years or something like that. And I think, you know, I can't say that I have answers or real suggestions. I think, you know, an equitable deal has got to be reached for anybody to go forward. People are suffering. I think, you know, I think the Directors Guild had different issues to solve. There are things that were facing the writers in particular and the actors that really don't apply to the directors. So I expect it was less challenging for them to make that deal. But you know, maybe somebody might tell me, well, you don't really know what you're talking about. But that's my feeling and impression about it.
There's a question here.
Hi, this is Matic Majcen from the daily newspaper Večer in Slovenia. I have a question for Wes Anderson, of course. I'd like to ask you about your feelings about using CGI in your last couple of films. For someone who comes from such a strong tradition of physical sets, did that present like a sort of a unavoidable necessity, or did it actually open up new creative possibilities?
What did I do?
I mean, it seems like you use it in small details throughout your films.
I don't know. Like in the last one, Asteroid City?
Let's take Henry Sugar, for example.
Henry Sugar. Well, I don't know. You mean CGI? I feel like that means. I may also not be. Somebody may tell me I have this wrong too. I think like CGI is when you create something from scratch out of with a computer. Something animation like in Asteroid City we have an alien he's not CGI, he's a puppet, essentially. And then sometimes he's Jeff Goldblum. Henry Sugar, I can't think of anything that I would call CGI. What we do is we slightly relentlessly polish, split screen, take something from one, a bird flew into the frame and landed on take 3. We stick him into take 17 that we're really using. We kind of use it that way. So I would say I agree with the first half of what you're saying. I tend to try to use what's on the set. But as an editorial process, it's the fact that you can mix things together digitally is just a totally revolutionary thing. And I was talking with my friend the other day about what has happened technologically in cinema that we feel really changes it for us. And for me, if I shoot on film, there are so many things that the equipment I tend to want to use tends to be equipment that in some basic form has been around since probably silent movies. I mean, sound was good to add in, but really it's the digital intermediate process and digital editing and kind of cutting in the frame. I mean, but maybe you have things that you think I did more that are more CGI-ish. Are there things like that? Because maybe I could be kind of fudging it. Are there things you think of, or?
No, I just meant like the small animations that you mentioned. Actually, it seems like you help yourself with animation in a couple of places throughout the film.
Yeah,
and
usually the animation we're doing with stop motion, and we really do it with puppets and everything like that. We don't. I mean, I try. The last thing I want to see is a green screen on the set if I can avoid it, and sometimes we bring one in. But we do try to kind of shoot something really on the set. It's more fun.
It also feels like it pertains to what you were talking about making it a documentary.
Yes.
Having that in that, giving
Yes.
it that moment, yeah?
Green screen doesn't give you a good documentary. Yes, no, it's exactly right.
There was a hand there, yeah, right there.
Hi, Elise Schaefer from Variety.
Hello.
I'm wondering, Henry Sugar is your second Roald Dahl adaptation after Fantastic Mr. Fox. Is there any other stories or works you have your eye on to adapt in terms of Dahl?
Well, I have. So we've done these other shorts. We've done one that's. Do you know the work pretty well? I mean, there's another one that's in the Henry Sugar collection that's called The Swan in the Henry Sugar and Six More set. And so we've done that one with Rupert Friend. We did a very old one called Poison, which is the one I always loved. And I can't remember which collection it's from. Maybe there's a book called Over to You, I think it might be, or Someone to Love, one of those. And then we've also done a very, very strange one called The Rat Catcher, which is from a book called Claude's Dog, a kind of obscure Dahl book about, I think, set in sort of eastern part of England. It's a really rural one, and it's a peculiar story. They're all strange, but I don't really have any other ones in mind. I have a couple of things. I have some things brewing, but that might be it for Dahl for the moment.
Speaking of literary adaptation, you love them. I mean, the three big names is Dahl, Salinger, and that come to mind, and Stefan Zweig.
Yeah.
And what's always strikes me is how precisely you capture the spirit of those books and of the writer himself, and at the same time, the film is just unmistakably yours.
Yeah.
So how do you work on adaptation? It's unusual, when people do literary adaptation, it's literary and it's just boring. And yours is cinematic, but also very insightful on the writer.
Well, I've done some real adaptations. Fantastic Mr. Fox or these Dahl ones are very direct adaptations. Stefan Zweig, Salinger, even adapting these Dahl books, essentially I'm just using Dahl to make my movie. But Stefan Zweig and Salinger and other kind of literary references, those are not real adaptations. They're some inspiration and influence, and those are much more complicated to write. To adapt a book, it can be a very straightforward thing.
Well, talk about the other ones then.
Well, the other ones, it's, you know, you're always asking yourself the same question: what happens next? Where do we go now? You know, that's what the audience wants to know. Okay, then what? So when you're adapting a book, you know where it's going. You have a roadmap of the whole thing. Even if you're expanding it on the front and the back, you still have so much to work with. So when you're writing a thing from scratch originally, it's like the most improvisational part of movie making to me, and you're always wondering, are we going to figure this out? Is it going to happen? But you know, I do think there's some filmmakers who I feel only did adaptations for their whole body of work and are so, like Francois Truffaut. I mean, the 400 Blows is, though the Antoine Doinel cycle, those are his, but virtually everything, the La Peau Douce is his, but almost everything else is adapted from a book, and yet he's such a strong voice. Yeah. Or someone like John Huston, I think,
they did a lot.
I think every single one might be a book. Yeah.
But literature really imbues your film in such a beautiful way.
Okay, thank you.
Wes, I understand you live in Paris, and we're having here at this festival Woody Allen with a French language comedy or thriller. And I wonder if the French influence that you see daily is going to let us see one day a Wes Anderson French language movie?
Well, you know, I did. First of all, you know, it helps if you can speak it. So, you know, you can be a better director when you understand if they've even said the right words. You know, A French Dispatch, that movie of a couple of years ago, a certain part of it, I mean, that one we did an odd thing, which I learned is called, oh gosh, what is it called? It's called something like non-cooperative bilingualism, something like that, which is, you speak your language to the person, and they answer in their language, and you respond in your language, and you know, you have a conversation, but neither of you speaks the same language. And the way we did it in the movie was, essentially, I preferred to have the actors speak the language that they were best in. And so we did this non-accommodating bilingualism. That's what it's called. And we subtitled, in different countries, different lines are subtitled. But I do find that that's often the way we communicate. I mean, as a my lifestyle is the foreigner's lifestyle. I'm a foreigner almost all the time. And I find that's often what I'm doing. I mean, in Italy, I always try to, you know, I'm so desperately want to speak Italian, but, you know, so I seem to sometimes, but it's not Italian. It's not really Italian. Thanks.
As a follow-up, what do you like about making films in different countries and immersing yourself in that culture?
Well, I think, you know, until I was probably 22 years old, I was virtually only in Texas. You know, I mean, maybe I traveled in America a bit and so, but my life was very, the perimeters of my life were compact. And the group of people I knew were in a small physical area. And so as soon as I sort of moved away from, but the thing is, I always was interested in movies. And the movies were from everywhere. And so I guess in a way the movies have always been my way to get out and see the world, and the more I got out, the more I kind of felt like I wanted to go further. I think I like the idea of, you know, having breakfast is an adventure, and if you're in a foreign country, sometimes that's what it is. I mean, in Paris, I think, you know, just going for a walk is like going to the movies sometimes. If you're in a neighborhood you don't see every day. So that's part of what I kind of drawn to. But I guess I also do like a bit the experience of being a little bit on the outside of the place where I live. I mean, I'm making this up right now, but I guess I kind of observe myself kind of liking that.
One more
Does that make
question.
sense?
Yes, there.
Giovanni, Corriere dello Spettacolo. I would like to know if there is a film when you was young that inspired you for your career and why.
Yes. Well, you know, there's so many. I think, you know, one thing I think of is when I was young, there was the Betamax, I think, Betamax and VHS release of all the Hitchcock, I guess they were the Universal Studios Hitchcock films. So it's Rope and The Man Who Knew Too Much, and Rear Window and Vertigo and North by Northwest, and there's a black one, maybe The Wrong Man. That group of films were released and Psycho and The Birds. And maybe some others. They were released as a set, and this, you know, on the front of every box it said Alfred Hitchcock with a picture of this guy. He made it. I was more accustomed to who's in it. So I loved these movies, not just for their suspense, but for his kind of voice, his way of staging a scene, his sort of clarity and some mood that I see throughout Hitchcock, and I guess that was part of what made me start thinking I'd like to try to be something like that. Thank you. Thanks, Giovanni.
Was Rear Window one of the important ones? It just feels because of the house and...
I guess it's my favorite, yes. You know, I mean, I feel like for many filmmakers, Vertigo is the one because of its psychological complexity, the strangeness of Vertigo. But for me, I love Rear Window, and part of what I love about Rear Window is I love the atmosphere in that apartment. James Stewart, he's stuck there. James Stewart and Grace Kelly and Thelma Ritter, and I love the dynamic of these characters, and I love his character. Yeah, that's, I guess, if I'm to say, I really love some of the British ones, you know, like the 39 Steps and Sabotage, and there's one called Young and Innocent. You know Young and Innocent?
No, I don't.
That's a good one.
Lady Vanishes.
The Lady Vanishes, yes. That period is some of my favorites, but then I think Rear Window might be my favorite.
One there. We almost have to go.
Sorry, journalists and film critics often describe your films and sometimes other people's films as well with the expression the Wes Anderson style. So I'd just like to know, does that style come naturally? Is it something that is rationally constructed? Is it still evolving? And do you see yourself doing something completely different out of that style?
Well, I don't, for myself, I'm sure this doesn't sound plausible, but I don't really feel I choose a style. You know, I guess a style is so many different choices, and most of those choices are me just doing what I want. So so in a way, it would say, would you like to do a movie not the way you want? And my answer, well, ideally, I'd rather do it the way I want. But you know, every time I do a movie, I feel like I'm doing something completely different. I'm going to a new territory and telling a different kind of story with a new set of characters and a different mixture of actors and all those things. But I know that there are so many things that link the way what I'm drawn to in general, and I guess it is kind of a thing you can see. It's me. But I hope I am always changing. And kind of finding new ideas or new ways to tell a story, but I guess it's all going to be a bit limited by being filtered through my own brain.
I have one last question, and it's about sugar. Can you talk a little bit about Ben Kingsley, because the presence is so powerful at the beginning of the film?
Yes, Ben Kingsley. Yes, you know, I was quite frightened to work with Ben Kingsley. And when I first met him, he's very, you know, he's a very erect posture. He's intimidating, and he's a little bit scary, I would say. And he I've been a very great fan of his for so long, and I just wasn't quite sure, how do I be the director with Ben Kingsley? What is my role going to be? And then, and we didn't know each other. We met once before the movie, and I mean, we'd spoken about the character and what's going on, and he'd been studying, and he was saying, this is a lot to memorize. But then the instant that he arrived on the set, he was so gentle and gracious, and I felt within 10 minutes of starting on our first day of work together, I could just feel him feeling, I'm comfortable. I feel like this is going to work, and that came back to me instantly. He emanated that, and so we couldn't have had a more pleasant, fun time, and I loved working with him. And in fact, the whole group, Dev Patel, Richard Ayoade, all these actors. My first time to work with Benedict, and I'd been talking with him about working together for some years. It was, such a happy experience.
Thank you. We have to close here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Wes.
everybody. Thanks again. Yeah.
Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di BASTARDEN, The Promised Land. Prima di cominciare con le domande vi presento gli ospiti al tavolo, che sono la produttrice Louise Best, lo sceneggiatore Anders Thomas Jensen, gli interpreti Simone Bennenbier, Amanda Collin e Mads Mikkelsen e lo sceneggiatore e regista Nikolai Arcel. Allora, alzate bene la mano per le domande così che così che possa vedervi. E vorrei cominciare con una domanda al regista, al Nikolai, chiedendo appunto di raccontarci, perché è qualcosa che abbiamo letto, come la sua esperienza di padre ha cambiato il suo punto di vista sulla propria filmografia, come in qualche modo questo film, come dire, figlio di un nuovo sguardo anche sulla propria professione, il proprio lavoro.
Yes, you know, it's obviously a very banal and simple thing to say that your life point of view changes when you have kids because it's so obvious. But until it happens to you as a human being, you don't know that it's obvious. You actually have no idea how crazily it changes your life. So it was just a perfect storm for me. When I read this novel, it was exactly the same time I had my first child, quite late in life, as a 47-year-old. And it was almost like reading the novel was exactly about that. It's family versus ambition. And up until that point in my life, I had been many things, but primarily I had just been about making films. My entire life was 24/7, movies, movies, movies. What's the next movie? What's the next point of excellence that I can reach in my craft? What's the next ambition? And I think, you know, when my son was born, I was like, oh, wait a minute, my mind exploded. And I felt there's something here that's completely much more important than anything else. And so it was quite perfect for me that happened, because I could finally, me and Anders Thomas is also a father, he has been for quite a while, we could write this film which was very much on point in terms of being, are you one thing, are you love or are you money, are you ambition or are you family? And that's why it was very personal for me.
Ad Anders Thomas e ancora a Nikolai vorrei chiedere come hanno lavorato sul romanzo, se, come dire, sono state apportate delle modifiche ai personaggi e qual è secondo loro il cuore di questa storia che valeva la pena sviluppare e raccontare.
Thomas, you want to take it?
It's funny because I should have reread the novel, because when you worked on it and seen the film so much, you sometimes you don't remember, because it's your own in a way. But we did a lot of structural changes. Nick is very much into structure, so there's, as with all novels, it takes place. I mean, the book is, I think, how many years? It spans over 30 years, the book. And there are loads of stories that, small stories where you just dwell with character stuff that we have taken out. So we tried to do quite a tight structure, I would say. Yeah, can you remember a big chunk we took out or anything? What's the big difference?
The main thing was that Ida Jessen's novel, which we both really loved, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be here, was very taken by the nature, and she's almost Tolkien-like in her way of describing the nature of the heath and the flowers and the plant life and everything. And obviously, while that's beautiful to read, it might not be so interesting to watch for hours and hours on end about walking around in nature. So a lot of that we changed. There were certain characters that we took out and certain plot things that we changed. But I would say Ida has seen the film and is very, very happy, and so she feels certainly that we've been faithful to her novel.
C'è una domanda? Prego.
Hello, this is Yanis from Greece. Congratulations for your film. I would like to ask the director, Nikolai, or anyone can answer from the panel, in which extent do you find relevance in contemporary times of this old story? Because I personally did find, so I would like to know your opinion. Thank you.
I think it is relevant when there's a character who goes through what Ludwig goes through and what and Barbara goes through. I think it's relevant because it's very universal. How do you manage your life? Do you believe that you can control your life, or do you lean into the chaotic nature of life? And I think that's something we all know very well as human beings, and we struggle with. And so that is the biggest relevance for me, is the emotional journeys of the characters.
Mi aggancio appunto all'ultima domanda, perché mi piacerebbe chiedere agli attori che cosa i personaggi che hanno interpretato hanno parlato, che cosa hanno detto loro i personaggi che hanno scelto, e in che modo hanno così pensato al proprio rapporto personale con l'ambizione, a proprio questa dualità tra ambizione e affetti che a volte non vanno d'accordo.
Okay, I'm gonna start here. Well, the first part of the question was about the character. He was fascinating to me from the top, like from the beginning. There's a sorrow in him, something broken inside him that I really find fascinating and really look forward to working with as an actor. He's also theatrical and funny and big, which I also really found interesting. My personal life and my ambitious life is, for the time being, very intertwined and I think also balanced. But of course, that's like water, it changes all the time.
Go? Do you want to end? I can say something. Very clever. I think for me, it was a definite attraction to the character and to Nicola. But there was one moment, I don't know if you remember, where obviously this modern work-life balance tale in the 1750s, I was a little, when you are about to give your whole life to a director and let him decide, it was important for me to understand that you also knew Anne Barbara's essence. Of course, you wrote her, but we had some talks about this. And then you showed me a video of your son, and I heard your wife's voice in the background, and I was like, he married an Anne Barbara. He knows the love. And so I surrendered, and it was a wonderful journey.
Can I add anything? I think when you talk about something that makes sense for us in 2023, there is a tendency that we always try to squeeze 2023 into historical pieces like our moral, our ways of looking at life. And I think we were very fortunate with this story. We didn't need to. We have a character here who has all the toys in the classroom, and all the kids wants to play with him because of that. But at the end of the day, he's a very lonely man. And then we have a woman that we probably would say, that is a strong woman, but we have no idea how strong she is. This is 50s. That she can even stand up on her two legs after what she's been through is insane, so there's no comparison, but we can relate to it. My character? Yeah, it's interesting to play a man who is so focused on one simple goal that he's prepared to burn down the world to achieve that goal. And also very interesting to give life to a man who wants to be part of something that he hates. I find it human, I find it complex, and a beautiful story.
Ci sono domande? Ma Nicolai, vorrei ancora chiedere il suo rapporto con i generi. Questo è un dramma storico, non è il suo primo, però naturalmente c'è del western, c'è l'epica. Ecco, che che rapporto ha con i generi, come ha lavorato nell'equilibrio di questi diversi generi.
That's an interesting question. You know, I think I think it's very obvious from watching this film of mine and also my last Danish film, A Royal Affair, is that I'm a big fan of big epic movies. That's something that I fell in love with at a very early age. You know, I don't know if I've told this story here, but my father actually took me to see Death in Venice when I was 10 years old. I had no idea what was going on, but I loved every second of it. And that's a big sweeping movie, you know, and I've always loved that. So I was mostly thinking about those epics from the 40s and 50s and 60s, specifically David Lean films, you know, I'm a great big fan of David Lean, and so that kind of came naturally to the way of telling this story with a lot of scope and intimacy at the same time. In terms of the Western genre, we never thought about it as a Western. Really? You thought about it as a Western? Okay. I didn't think I didn't think as much about it as a Western as I recognized there were Western elements in it, in as much as it's about pioneers that arrive in the wilderness and try to colonize and build a life for themselves, and people are riding horses and have guns. But there's also, you know, the royal court. There's the landowner who lives with fancy wigs and all that, and that is different from the Western genre. So I thought it was an interesting mash between those different genres.
Mm-hmm. And Mads aveva già lavorato con Nicolai in Royal Affair, che è un altro appunto period drama, un altro film in costume, e quindi vorrei chiedergli che regista ha trovato a distanza di qualche anno e come si è sviluppato, come si è evoluto il vostro rapporto professionale.
We didn't work together for 10 years, but we've known each other since. We became friends when we did the first film. And so obviously there is a couple of weeks of honeymoon where we have to find each other, figure out how we work together. When he says something, what does that mean in my ears, and vice versa. And when we started out this time, we didn't have to go through that honeymoon. It was we just kind of started from scratch and agreed and disagreed and started diving into the plot and the story. So it was quite effortless. It was I was very disappointed it took him 10 years to call me, but he did.
Yeah.
Anders, prima si diceva appunto del lavoro fatto sulla struttura del romanzo, e siccome ci sono delle novità, dei cambiamenti rispetto al romanzo, se come dire, questi cambiamenti sono stati fatti in collaborazione con gli attori, se ci sono state delle conversazioni riguardo proprio la costruzione dei personaggi e la modifica di questi personaggi rispetto al romanzo.
The structural part of it, we didn't. I mean, we finished the script and sent out to the actors. But of course, as always, I think in Denmark, anyway, Nick and I'm sure, and a couple of other directors, we also because we have time to do it, because a lot of times you can't get the actors, and so we always take in a lot of inputs from the actors. So we did go through every character with the actors, and we did some rewrites, which is always, I mean, it's always great, because when you have more good minds, is better than just the two of us.
Yeah. I remember when we first knew that this was what we wanted to do, before we even wrote the script, I called up Mads and we had a meeting, and I said to Mads, this is the story, we're about to write the script, do you like the idea, and do you want to play the role? And he said, yes, I'll play the role if you write a good script. So it was of course it wasn't just like based on my brown eyes, but after delivering the script, I mean, I think you and the three of us spent a lot of time with Mads, also just brainstorming, just having ideas about character stuff, and later we also did with Amanda.
Do you want to say when? What you said when you called up me?
I don't remember what I said. What did I say when I called you?
You said, it's a movie, it's period, and it's maths.
I'm in, you said. Yeah.
Maybe mass.
Maybe mass.
Right. Yeah, for us, I think, as Thomas said as well, I think we're just used to in Denmark. We get surprised when people don't work like this. We did it from the beginning. We always do it to more or less degree, depending on the director and the writer. But for us to dive into the material together is important. It might not be a ton of changes, but for us it's important that we're on the same page once we start filming. So if I have a ton of questions, they might just be easily answered. Or if not, we might just correct a few things. And so when we start on the first day, we don't spend too much time discussing what this is all about.
C'è una domanda qui davanti e poi ancora dietro.
Hello, I'm from Denmark, and it's a pleasure to be here. So you're a little bit into it. This is a cast and a Danish production, which is entirely Nordic. It therefore has some lack of diversity, you would say, as also new rules are implied in Hollywood.
What are you on to?
Sorry, but
from the get-go.
From the get-go, there is some rules of diversity across the Atlantic for competing in the best picture, the equivalent to this competition. As I see it, you don't live up to these standards with this broadcast, and there is just curious, it's not because of artistic reasons, it's because of lack of diversity that this can't compete in that competition. Are you worried about that?
Are you? I'm serious and honest because you're putting us on the spot, so yeah, you answer the question.
No, because I have, in comparison, Parasite was a great movie.
What do you think?
I was thinking that Parasite was a great movie coming from South Korea, had the same level of diversity, but coming from South Korea, this was actually still eligible for the competition. You, as a Danish movie with an all-Nordic cast, is not. And that's what I think is a little bit conundrum here.
I don't understand the question.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the film takes place in Denmark in the 1750s.
Yeah.
We do have a big plot line, you know, about a girl of color who is being subjected to racism.
Okay.
And you know, and which was very rare. Any people of color in Denmark in the 70s, almost nobody. She was probably at the time the only one in the entire country of Denmark. So it was. I would say that it hasn't been. It wasn't a thought in our mind that I think it would be a little weird. You know, if it's just a historical
exactly.
how it was in the 1750s.
That's also what I was portraying for.
Yeah. Cool.
Luis,
yeah, I think you raise an interesting question. In my opinion, I've been a producer for many, many years, and I think we are all discussing these things, and I think all populations needs diversity, creativity, and pluralism in the art. Yes. We have to give a mirror of the society around us. So that's really important for all art to give these three things. In my opinion, it's a failure if we want to put this into every single film, because if every single film gets all the diversity into the single films, then all films becomes the same. So it's very important. I mean, we are filmmakers. Nikolaj, in this, with this film, is telling his view on a specific story, and it's the people who makes the rules, the institutions, that needs to take into concern that when we have made 100 films in Denmark, those 100 films needs to be as diverse, as creative, as plural as the society around us, but never put all the diversity into one piece, because then everything becomes the same. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Prego.
Hello, this is Yanis again. Sorry, I have one more question. Maybe the screenwriter could answer it. What impressed me in the film is the way, the easiness in which the landowner tortures people, kills people, throws people from the windows. It's. I was wondering, because it really impressed me. Is it based on facts or is it pure fiction? Those particular scenes of torturing and killing, no matter if they're innocent or ex-convicts or whatever. The easiness with which he kills, he takes human lives.
The answer is both yes and no, because there was a notorious landowner at that time called the Shingle, who was known for he was known for punishing his farmers, his peasants, extremely hard, and I think also killing them. But we know very little about it. So there's only one quote from him we know today, and we know nothing of him. So we took that, that little historic quote and sort of built the character from that. And the quote is, he actually says it in the film. He says, "You have to live good lives, but most of all, I have to live a very good life." And that's the quote that survived. So I'm sure he hasn't been like this. The whole thing with his father, the whole psychology, we don't know, but I guess he's done some nasty things. So a little bit of it is real.
Historically, there was some quite horrific, punishment of the workers, farmers in that time. But some landowners, were more decent, and some were more, brutal, as is the case with every human being. There are different kind of human beings, but the ways of torturing, those are real. Those are research. Those were actual ways. Yeah, that was so.
Ecco, mi chiedevo se appunto in questo caso il film è basato sul romanzo, che a sua volta è basato su una storia vera, se in questo caso gli attori, lavorano esclusivamente sulla sceneggiatura o personalmente sentono il bisogno comunque di fare delle ricerche sul periodo storico, sui personaggi che eventualmente rappresentano, incarnano.
I can start. Mm-hmm. Because I love that question. There's a very strong energy in the book, and like Nikolai says, it's almost like you can taste and feel and hear the nature, and in the same way I feel like you can, at least for Anne Barbara, taste and feel and hear her when you read the book. Of course, then there's a big transition of pushing away the book and reading a script instead. But I think we all did a beautiful collaboration in maintaining that energy of Anne Barbara, and that includes Nikolai, but also the team around me. Hair and makeup and costume and set and everything. I at least felt a huge collaborative in building this character on me, which was very nice to experience. Yeah.
I deliberately didn't read the book until I read the script. For me, it's important that what Nikolai and Thomas came up with is our base, our Bible. That's what we are working from. Once we know where that story is going, I might sneak peek in the book and see if there's some inspiration there that we didn't get on the page. And I also Googled him. It turned out he was a lieutenant and not a captain. Okay. And I kind of liked that he was lying himself to be a captain, but we kept him as a real captain, right? No, I think that the story, her story is fiction based on something, and our story is fiction based on her fiction. So for us, this is our story. And if I start, like, what about the guy with the blonde hair? What about the cow? That was so important.
That was me. What about the cow?
And so for me, this is what we're working from, and so I deliberately didn't.
Simon?
I used my energy on the character from the script. I didn't think so much about Frederick from real life. I was taking him out of the book and taking him as near to me as I could, and blowing some air into him. Yeah.
Ci sono domande? Prego. No, per le traduttrici serve il microfono.
Hello. My question is just a curiosity. Since it's a costume movie, How do you work on costumes, on scenography? Do you do research? Do you have some indications, historical or in the book, maybe?
Yes, what we did was we collected a lot of paintings, very famous actually Danish paintings that were done in the period. There was painters who had painted these people on the heath and the various, so we used that a lot for the costumes and for the colors and everything. And of course, the trick as a director is to hire a great costume designer and a great, because then you can relax because she really did all the big work and researched and did huge books of, colors and costumes. So she was wonderful, Kiki, in sort of making sure that it felt real and the colors were fitting so the universe I was envisioning.
C'è ancora una domanda lì? Sì, sì.
Yeah, hello. I'm a psychologist and I do cinematography, and I have a question for the actress and for the actors. What did you learn about yourself during this journey, and what's yours in this story, in this character? Thank you.
Do you want to start? I'm so curious to your answer.
This is going to sound pretentious, obviously, but if I play Einstein, I have to be smarter than him. I'm not going to learn something from the character. I have to be on top of it, together with the director, the author, and figure out what is his flaw, what is the mirror reflection of Einstein that he can't see clearly himself. That's what we're trying to bring to life, as an actor, as a director. And so I'm not going to learn, but I'm obviously going to carry something I thought about. But the idea that a character would drag me somewhere where I don't know where it's going, I find it a little, that's not how we make films. We're shoving it somewhere that we think is interesting. Obviously, in this case, with this character I'm playing now, he doesn't need anyone. He doesn't want anyone. He's absolutely 100% sure he doesn't. And then he gets surprised later on in life. I have to know that from the get-go as an actor. So I love being with him. I don't know if I learned something from him.
Amanda?
Yeah, well, that was interesting because I'm the complete opposite. I feel like when we work, like I said before, I surrender completely into Nikolai and to the story, and to Mads also. And in that free fall, it's purely intuition that takes over, and I try to leave my head behind. And then 6 months or a year or maybe even 2 years or now here, there are many things that I can see like, oh, that was so interesting that we did that because this has integrated in my life now. And, oh, so I always feel like I learn a great deal about my parts. And I'm always so excited to see which one I'm about to play because it filters together. So I'm happy I'm not playing a psychopath anymore. So you can make of that what you want.
Simon?
Yeah, I think maybe I learned that I got this theory from working with that I don't believe so much in evil intentions. Like I believe you can do evil and horrible things, but maybe the intention of doing it is not to be evil. It's to hurt someone or get something in return or being admired or feared or something. And that was kind of new in my brain, that way of looking at the world.
Il tempo a nostra disposizione è finito, grazie.
Thank you.
Test, 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 test.
Send tones to the videographer.
Sorry.
Filmer. Yeah. Noise. Can you do a test?
Buongiorno e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa del nostro film in concorso Poor Things. Prima di cominciare con le domande, vi presento gli ospiti al tavolo a partire dalla destra in fondo. Il produttore Andrew Lowe, il produttore Ed Guiney, lo scenografo James Price, lo scenografo Shona Heath, il regista del film Yorgos Lanthimos, il direttore della fotografia Robbie Ryan, la costumista Holly Weddington, il hair makeup and prosthetic designer Nadia Stacy e il compositore Jerskin Fendix. And before I hand the question to the floor, I have a question for Yorgos. Yorgos, on the press notes, there is this beautiful line from Emma. What would a woman do if she was able to start from scratch? It feels like this film, you've worked with her before, it feels like this film, it's a totally new game for her, and she was also in it as a producer. Can you talk a little bit about her involvement and the collaboration on this piece?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Emma was involved very early on because I already had read Alistair Gray's novel back in 2011. And I went and met him and got his blessing into adapting it into a film. But it took quite a few years, as you can see, to get there. So while we were making The Favorite with Emma, I already had it in mind, and I think we had started already working on the script with Tony McNamara. And I mentioned it to her as soon as we finished The Favorite, and she was extremely excited about the notion of playing this character, and she wanted to be involved as much as possible. So from then on, I kept her in the loop on all the drafts and all the ideas about designing the world and all the people that we were going to be working together and other actors. And I think that actually helped her a lot with even her performance as well, because she kept this idea in her mind for a long time. And then when the time came for her to actually do it, I mean, she had lived with this character for quite some time. Not necessarily consciously, but it was always there with her, I think. And being part of every aspect of the film, every decision, I think, makes this so much more rich in every way.
We have a question here.
Congratulations. Stephen Schaefer here for the Boston Herald. Congratulations. Just an awesome movie that has nothing else like it.
Thank you.
Yorgos, how would you describe this to people? And you mentioned it's an adaptation. How much is from the novel, and how much have you switched it and made it a Lanthimos piece?
Yeah. Well, I'd describe it how you did. Like it's a film that's very hard to describe. I don't think. I mean, to be honest, I mean there have been films, throughout time that are, unique and exceptional. So I guess maybe in our time, maybe there aren't many films like it. It's hard for me to say what it is. And what was the other question? Oh, the novel, yes. The novel, we had to change the structure a little bit of the novel. There was elements that were, more novelistic devices as part of the novel. There were like found documents, reputation, is that the word?
Repetitions?
No, to repute something.
Oh, reputations.
Reputations of the documents. Your repudiation of documents, thank you very much. Which worked well in the novel. There's some large parts of the novel which are almost like an essay and more political about specific themes that Alasdair Gray was interested in. But early on, and as soon as I read the novel, we decided that it was going to be her story, her point of view. That's what drew me immediately to the material. Like this character, unlike any other character that I've read before, this mind that can start free without any shame, prejudice, just experience the world in her own terms. That we felt that this is the line that we need to follow to make this into a film. So we shed a few things, but I think also the humor in the film, the tone of the film, many of the characters, the locales, a lot of it, and a lot of the essence of the novel is there.
Yorgos, I have a follow-up. Did you also open the film more to the world, more than the book, which was more Glasgow Bay? Because part of the beauty is also the wonder, with the way she perceives all these different places and the different people she meets.
No, it was actually, she took that trip around the world. It was part of her journey and education and experience. It just started from Glasgow. We start from London, but with a Glasgowian doctor. But yeah,
Glaswegian.
Glaswegian.
There's a question there.
Jesus, it's not my first language.
You're usually pretty good.
I'm nervous.
Okay, absolutely.
Hello, this is Yanis Zaboulakis from from Greece. Congratulations.
I made a film in Greece. Don't ask that.
No.
This year.
I did it. I am stupid, but not that stupid. Okay, no, it has to do with the film itself. In which way, if you think that this is correct, do you find some connection between the films and books dramatical era with contemporary times?
To understand that better, if I find how older periods...
No, if you find a connection, and if yes, which is the connection between the theme of the film and the book and contemporary times?
Okay, this was in particular. Okay. Yeah, well, I think it feels extremely contemporary. I don't think speaking about, freedom and the way we think and the way we perceive the world, the position of women in society, or men as well, the relationship between men and women, that's still very contemporary. Things have changed slightly, so we have new tools to identify things. And the book was written in the 90s, so it's funny that not much has changed since then. But yeah, I just find it extremely contemporary in every aspect of it. It just uses, a certain form of a Gothic novel and a period film or story, in that case, to speak about contemporary issues.
There's a question here.
Yorgos, from Glasgow to London, you shot it in my city, in Budapest. By the way, I'm Aliko Navai with the Budapest Reporters / Golden Globes. My question to you and to all of you, basically, did you have a good time in Budapest working working during COVID and working with the Hungarian crews? And there are certain locations that I find similar or familiar, but there are certain locations I don't even recognize. So can you tell me about your location scout and why did you choose Budapest?
Shona and James, you want to take that? We'll start from the end of the...
Hello. So we actually went on a bit of a European tour, Kasia, Manapan and myself, to find a city or a place that we could make this movie, because Yorgos wanted to originally build everything so that it would be a complete studio picture. However, time and budget meant that we had to pick a handful of locations, but not many. And the reality is, outside London, there's nowhere else in Europe we could have made this movie. It doesn't have the sound stages, for one. You have two very big studios there that we used, Corda and Origo, and also the infrastructure of the crew there. You know, they are able to facilitate and do, on a regular basis, big, huge movies. And we weren't in that scale, but we had ambitions with our sets that we wanted to build and create a world that's pretty big in scope. So we, at one point, had, I think, sort of like 3/4 of the construction crew working for us on our sets. We became so big that we were like a self-eating snake. We were losing craft. Well, I'd be like, "Where's that painter gone today?" And then you'd turn up on Lisbon, and they'd have just been, well, they were in London, you know, and they're working for different companies. So the reality is, there is, at that time, I don't know if still now, but there's nowhere else in Europe other than London that could have made it. And the craftsmanship and quality was outstanding. The art department skill level of the art directors and the draftspeople and everybody were first rate and really kind of humbling. And the sculpture work and everything about it was quite incredible.
Yeah, but the cities themselves weren't locations, they were built.
Pull it.
Yeah, the cities were built. Thank you. Yeah? Am I working?
No.
No. So London, Paris and Lisbon, they weren't locations, they were built from scratch. So we needed the big studios there.
There is a question right here.
Hello, Alison Boscher from...
We had a great time in Budapest. It was a very unique experience for all of us, to be honest. And yeah, I think when we left, we kind of missed it immediately. No? I did. But also I wanted to leave, you know, like you never have an incredible time making a film, you know. So the city was great, but, you know, at some point you just have to leave.
Good steam baths as well.
Yeah, hi, Alison Boschoff from the Daily Mail in London. Congratulations on a fantastic film, a really enjoyable couple of hours, and I have actually read the book. My question is that a lot of the story is told through sex. How did you approach it with Emma? Because it's obviously probably, I can't think of a movie which has had quite so much sex in it that I've seen for a long time. You know,
yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why is there no sex in movies?
There should be more. Every movie should be like yours. I had a fabulous time.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Emma cannot be here with us to speak more about it, because it's weird, you know, that it will be coming all from me. But how we were, first of all, it was an intrinsic part of the novel itself. You know, her freedom about everything, including sexuality. And secondly, it was very important for me to not make a film which was going to be prude, because that would be like completely betraying the main character. So we had to be confident, and again, like the character, have no shame, and Emma had to have no shame about her body nudity in, you know, engaging in those scenes, and she understood that right away. The great thing about myself and Emma is that now we've completed like 4 films together, so you can understand that there's a shorthand, and we can communicate without having to explain everything or talk too much about things. So as soon as I started saying something like I just said, she said, yes, of course, I understand. You know, it's Bella, like, we'll do what we need to do. And from then on, it was a great experience, actually, because although we were working in big studios and sets that we built, and there was a lot of crew and lights, we still managed to maintain the same kind of atmosphere that we had in previous experiences, like, on location with natural light by lighting the sets as much as we could from the outside, from windows, and using practical lights. So that enabled us to just have 3 people in the room, like just the camera. Sometimes even sound wouldn't be there. We would just rig the mics in various places, and it was just Robbie, myself, Haley, our AD, and the actors. So that created a very comfortable, intimate environment. And also I have to credit Elle McAlpin, who's our intimacy coordinator, which in the beginning, this profession just felt like a little threatening, I think, to most filmmakers. But I think it's like everything. Like if you work with a good person, it's gonna, it's great, and you realize that you actually need them. So she made everything so much easier for everyone. Like she's also, like, her personality is great for that kind of thing that she does. So she made everyone feel very comfortable. Emma and the actors that we rehearsed with, Mark Ruffalo, that she had, quite a few sex scenes with, they were already very familiar through the rehearsal process. And all the actors that came in just for a scene or two, that's when Elle became very useful. She would speak to them before, then they would get acquainted with Emma. And it just created a very comfortable environment for everyone. So that was extremely helpful to us. And we decided with them, we sat down with Emma at some point. I mean, there was a script, and especially for the sex scenes, though, we just sat down and decided, so what kind of position we do here? What kind of thing we do there? What's missing? What's, from the experience of sex and the different desires that people have, do we need to portray in order to make this, just a complete, well, I don't know how much complete it can be, but to make like enough enough of a representation of, human desire and idiosyncrasies, and all of these kind of things. But yeah, it was important for all of us, I think, to have that be a part of the film and not shy away from it.
Is there a question?
Yeah, and it's also very funny sometimes, yeah.
I have a question here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is Sabina Pekova from Cineuropa, and I kind of specialize in animals in your films, Lanthimos. So I would like to ask you about the hybridity of the animals in particular, because it's different from the book. And if you could tell us how that process went, how you came up with the matching of animals, and of course, maybe for the end of the film.
Yeah. Robbie, you want to take the animals? How we did it?
Yeah, with a lot of the things in the film, we approached it trying to make it as if you're just filming it in front of you, but obviously a duck and a dog don't necessarily stick together. So we had to do some VFX CGI work, but we shot it in a way that was probably mostly difficult for the CGI people to try and achieve, because it was the way we would film it normally, and they had to take our information and make it work. And we went through quite a few, versions of them. But it was a lot of fun, and I think we had a second unit who spent a lot of time filming a lot of film to try and get an animal to do a move or a turn. And it was a very enjoyable part of the film, because seeing those animals come to life was quite strange. But we did a test at the beginning, and it kind of seemed to work. And you just pick which animal kind of would mix with another animal, and I think the pig chicken was the trickiest one. Is that a chicken?
I don't remember that. I only remember Goose Willis.
Goose Willis.
Yeah.
That was the first guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the first guy. That was the goose and the dog.
Chicken dog's good too.
Yeah.
I like to go back to Bella for a moment and ask Holly and Nadia to speak a little bit of how they built the look of this character and her coming of age, or her acquiring freedom through the film, because it's very unique, the character, and again she was starting from scratch.
Yes, it's true. Yes, it was quite a jigsaw puzzle, actually, putting the wardrobe together. It was a lot of different requirements, and there was a very distinct journey that we had to, it's a sort of dramaturgy, really, that we had to achieve in the costuming. You know, starting when she was, you know, in the house, where the whole language is based on her being in these quite childlike pieces of clothing that, you know, are made of quilting and seersucker and childlike babyish fabrics, and everything is cozy and, you know, suitable for a young child, and also very sort of dissembled and bits coming off and bits missing. The whole conceit of that was that, you know, like a young child, she would be dressed by Mrs. Prim in the morning, and by about, you know, within an hour, her clothes would all be kind of half missing. So she's often in strange combinations of clothes, which are quite incongruous to look at. And then when she's set free, when she leaves the house and ends and gets to Lisbon, she no longer has Mrs. Prim to dress her, so she's kind of dressed in this travelling suit, but after the first, she has sex with Duncan in the hotel, and then she just comes out just with her knickers on, which we just thought was really funny because she wouldn't think to put a skirt on. And that look is, I think, probably my favourite in the film, because she just sort of wanders around Lisbon amongst a load of people wearing these ridiculous Victorian outfits with corsets, and she never wears a corset. I mean, we committed to that from the beginning. And then, you know, she puts her clothes together in this kind of, in a way that nobody else is doing, because she doesn't really think about things like how you put an outfit together properly. And really, until that moment on the cruise ship, actually, where she's in a sort of very formal white cruise ship outfit, that sort of felt important, because that's the moment when she sees this abject poverty that is very shocking for her, and very really sets her on her path towards wanting to do something meaningful with her life. And then she becomes a doctor, and
and then the end.
Yeah, that's it.
Nadia.
Well, I always kind of come on board after production design and costume design are on. So when I came on board, the world was already starting to be created. And it was just apparent to me that we hadn't seen a character like Bella before. And obviously, a main thing with her being this experiment is that her hair grows at an accelerated rate. And I kind of wanted to use that to mark her journey as well. So we, as ever, I wasn't allowed to use wigs. And,
Sorry, as Emma said.
So we had these hair pieces made in various lengths, and I kind of changed that with each place she went to. And that's always, you know, working with Holly, that always kind of determines where I go, depending on the costume and, you know, at what state she's at. But I just love that there's certain images where she's got this really long hair around all these other people that have got these period hairstyles in Lisbon, and she's just got this wild hair. It just really shows who she is against the society she's in.
Thank you. I think there was a question right there.
Hello, Yorgos Karateria. Congratulations. Well, as from film to film, it's obvious that the visual style, your visual style, becomes striking. And I'm wondering if it emerges from the story and the characters in each film separately. And I'm not talking only about the black and white and color, but the wide angle, fisheye, you know, the variety of shots. Or is it something that you want to do deliberately to emphasize?
No, you could go on. I've been doing it all day talking about that.
I think it's a combination of both. I always start by what the film is and what feels right, how it feels right to you know, film a certain kind of situation, characters, story. But there's also an aspect of, you know, what interests me in general in terms of filmmaking and developing a certain kind of aesthetic that serves the way I want to tell stories and push that, you know, further with each film. pushing it further, it doesn't necessarily mean going more extreme or whatever, although this case seems like that, and I felt that it fitted this story in particular more. For example, we just shot another film with Robbie again, which is, you know, much simpler and very different, because I felt that story needed that, and also probably because we were like, oh, let's do something different, you know, like let's not get bored. And this film in particular, I think it had to do also with the creation of the world. Like, as soon as I read the novel, I realized that we would need to build a world for her to inhabit. It couldn't be the world as we know it. It should be slightly, you know, skewed and tweaked according to her perspective and point of view through her eyes. So that led us into building everything in a studio and, you know, adding all these elements that are not realistic in any way. And I think that lent itself to film in a certain way as well. So that is either enhanced or sometimes toned down, or, you know, using the black and white and the color, like seeing a part of the world only in black and whites, and then starting a journey, and then returning to the same place and seeing it from a different perspective in color. So I think it had to do a lot with what was going on and how we built this world, but also like a personal exploration of, you know, cinema, movie making, and yeah, photography in general.
I think there's a gentleman who's been very patient down there.
Hello, this is for Yorgos. Hi, right here. You have a unique gift for sort of mining the humor and absurdity out of sex, which I think is quite an evolved approach. But I'm curious just where that comes from and what you're trying to explore there, you know, because I think most people don't take that approach. I mean, like you said, there isn't even sex in movies anymore, but it seems like quite an evolved approach.
Well, I wouldn't think that. I take it from people. Like, I just, you know, observe and read and imagine. Yeah, I think there's, you know, there's absurdity in every kind of human behavior, like from the simplest thing. And why wouldn't it be part of sex and how our desires form or are manifested? So it just seemed like a natural film to me. Although, you know, it ended up being maybe absurd within the context of everything. Initially, it just seems natural that you have all these kind of different human beings and different kind of behavior, including in sex. So I think that.
There's one there, and we're almost.
Yes, Jacqueline from the United States. This question is for Yorgos or anyone who wants to comment on the casting. You enlisted a couple of very talented American comedians for this one with Gerard and Rami, and I'm curious if you could talk about them, because I feel after The Favorite, there was plenty of people knocking on your door to be a part of your next project, and I feel their inclusion in this really says something about the type of cast you want to have as far as younger voices, also Margaret, just, I think, approaching it differently.
Yeah, well, thank you for noticing. I think it had, for a while now, I basically just think of the people that I want to work with, and if it makes sense with the film that we're making, try and include them. And Gerard and Rami were like two people that I admire them. I admire their work as well, and they're also gifted performers. So it was just a natural thing for me to, you know, to go and talk to these people. We met anyway without having any goal necessarily, but, you know, as soon as we started talking and realized how we appreciate each other's work, as soon as I find the opportunity, I went like, well, there's this film that we're making, there's this character. Of course, it's not necessarily written, and of course, they weren't written like that in the original novel. But, you know, I'd rather work with people that I respect and admire and I want to work with, rather than trying and cast someone because of a prescribed, you know, character or anything like that. So I think, you know, they're both incredible and very, very generous, because especially Gerard came in for a few days, and, you know, he's a busy man himself, and he's a very gifted director as well. And I saw him in his performance also in his film that he directed. I just felt very lucky that they wanted to be part of our group and, spend time together. Because that's my, offer to them. Like, would you like to come for, like a week or a couple of weeks and, we can spend time together and create something and it will be fun and hopefully we'll get to do it again like we do it with, with other of the actors that I worked with before.
I'm really sorry, but they told me that we're running out of time. Thank you so much for everyone to be here. Thank you, Yorgos, for the film.
Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di Finalmente l'Alba, come sapete film in concorso. Vi presento al tavolo i produttori Paolo Del Brocco, Rai Cinema, e Mario Gianani, Wildside, società del gruppo Fremantle. La protagonista Rebecca Antonaci, e il regista e sceneggiatore Saverio Costanzo.
Grazie.
In prima fila do il benvenuto e saluto Andrea Scorsati per Fremantle, Lorenzo Gangarossa, Wildside, società del gruppo Fremantle, Nicola Maccanico per Cinecittà, Luigi Lonigro, 01 Distribution, e Samantha Antonicola, Rai Cinema. Come potete immaginare, il cast internazionale non è potuto arrivare al Lido perché aderisce allo sciopero degli attori SAG, e lo stesso vale anche per Harold Wacker. Allora, io comincio con una domanda per Saverio Costanzo, poi alzate bene le mani così che vi veda. Saverio, è un film, cioè il racconto di formazione al femminile, una giovane donna protagonista. Quanto è stato importante per te raccontare questa storia, osservare questo mondo da un punto di vista femminile?
Salve a tutti. Allora, io in realtà mi trovo più a mio agio, questo mi era già successo di dirlo rispetto all'Amica Geniale, io mi trovo più a mio agio con personaggi femminili, e non è una strategia che penso o qualche cosa che scelgo di fare in un modo, diciamo, freddo, mi viene semplicemente più naturale. E trovo che sia più divertente, più imprevedibile, più da maschio imparo anche moltissimo quando entro dentro dei personaggi femminili, è un'esperienza molto più elettrizzante, ecco, per me come tipo proprio di... in questo caso poi, diciamo, la volontà iniziale era quella di raccontare l'omicidio di Vilma Montesi del 1953 in Italia, non tutti chiaramente lo ricordano, io neanche, ho dovuto studiarlo. È stata trovata una ragazza morta sulla spiaggia nel 1953, che fu in un certo senso uno spartiacque nella storia italiana, almeno dell'opinione pubblica italiana, perché da quel momento le cronache raccontano che in un certo senso l'Italia ha perso l'innocenza, cioè di questa ragazza morta a un certo punto non è importato più niente a nessuno, perché le persone coinvolte erano personaggi del mondo della politica, dello spettacolo, e dunque sono saliti all'onore della cronaca i possibili carnefici ed è svanita la vittima. Allora l'idea iniziale era quella proprio di lavorare su questo, che mi sembra che poi è un'abitudine che abbiamo perfezionato negli anni, quella di non avere più nessuna empatia verso la vittima, ma soltanto di interessarci nel tempo brevissimo, sempre più breve, che abbiamo a disposizione prima che ne arrivi un altro, dei carnefici. E anche lì credo che ci sia un gioco perverso, no? Di vedere cadere qualcuno, insomma. E poi però scrivendo è come se in un certo senso il personaggio di Rebecca Mimosa viene fuori proprio nel tentativo di cambiare un epilogo che mi stava portando verso la fine. E allora la domanda che mi sono fatto all'epoca era: ma che senso ha a questo punto? È molto più interessante se noi raccontiamo un personaggio che segue proprio le orme che ha lasciato la Montesi in questo sentiero, però poi alla fine ha un epilogo, è come se l'epilogo di Mimosa è quello che riconsegna la dignità della memoria a Vilma Montesi. Perciò il fatto che lei riesca a sopravvivere è perché prima di lei qualcun altro ha fatto quella strada e non ce l'ha fatta, diciamo. E dunque questo, ecco, io non riesco a pensare in termini femminili e maschili, io l'avevo detto sempre qui per l'Amica Geniale nella prima stagione, io ho come tutti noi, abbiamo, ecco, se i maschi imparano a dialogare con la loro parte femminile, imparano sicuramente moltissimo di loro stessi, ed è un esercizio che a me piace moltissimo fare.
Senti, tra i tuoi tanti talenti c'è quello di farci scoprire, scusa il gioco di parole, ma insomma dei talenti che poi rimangono patrimonio, restano patrimonio del nostro cinema, della nostra TV. Ieri, guardando Adam Driver, ricordavo quando appunto nel 2014 ci hai fatto scoprire questo grandissimo attore. E come è andata con Rebecca? Che cosa hai trovato in lei che insomma fosse giusto?
Guarda, Rebecca è stata una fortuna per me, come anche Adam, come Luca Marinelli, come tutti gli attori che ho avuto la fortuna di incontrare. Io ho girato una pubblicità, ne ho fatta solo una. Credo che chi me l'ha fatta fare non desidera mai più replicare l'esperienza, perciò one and only, diciamo così. Però quella pubblicità mi è servita per una cosa: intanto a capire che non mi interessa farle, e la seconda è Rebecca, perché uno di questi personaggi era questa ragazza, un adolescente nella stanzetta dell'adolescente eccetera, e giravamo una cosa tutto sommato molto semplice, lei ha una faccia molto bella eccetera, però mi aveva colpito perché quando ero lì, immaginatevi stanzetta piccola d'adolescente, un caldo incredibile, macchinisti, elettricisti montavano le cose, e lei è rimasta nel lettino, stava zitta con gli occhi chiusi, e io le dico: scusa Rebbe, ma vattene di là, nel senso, che fai qua? No, io mi concentro così. Dunque era una ragazza e mi aveva colpito perché riusciva a fare vuoto nella confusione, e dava un'idea di grande radicamento, come dire, di qualcuno che sa il fatto suo, e poi che era curiosa, guardava, insomma. E dunque quando poi io stavo scrivendo il film in quel periodo, e ho cominciato a pensare a lei, e quando poi sono arrivati i provini, è una delle prime persone che ho voluto vedere, e naturalmente poi ci ho messo un anno per vedere tutto quello che potevo cercare di migliore, che chiaramente non l'ho trovato. Perché per riuscire ad affermare una cosa, no? Diceva Stanley Kubrick una cosa che mi aveva colpito moltissimo, molto bella: quando c'era il vestito di Nicole Kidman in Eyes Wide Shut, no? Allora la costumista gli porta la canottiera e le mutande, dice: queste le ho prese dove immaginiamo che gente dell'Upper East Side compra l'intimo a New York. E lui dice: bene, ora fammi vedere tutto quello che c'è nei negozi a New York. E lei dice: ma come, ti piacciono? Ho detto: ma io se non vedo tutto quello che c'è, come faccio a sapere che questo è quello che voglio? Perciò abbiamo, povera Rebecca, cercato per un altro anno facendola aspettare. Questa è la tipica tortura, successe alle ragazze dell'Amica Geniale, insomma c'è sempre questa graticola, e però poi eccoci qua, ecco.
Certo. Allora c'era una domanda lì, poi qui. Il microfono, signora.
Il caso Montesi, vorrei capire perché tirare fuori adesso questo caso Montesi, perché in Italia, è un regista italiano, quindi parliamo di una realtà che ci circonda. In Italia i femminicidi aumentano, mi chiedo se c'è una correlazione fra quello che succede adesso, non solo poi in Italia, anche nel resto del mondo, e appunto questo tirare fuori questo caso Montesi, per il quale, se non erro, non è mai poi stato trovato un responsabile. E questo è la grande perdita dell'innocenza italiana, perché come al solito i casi italiani poi finiscono in prescrizione.
Sì. Allora, perché il caso Montesi? Perché in realtà, come sempre, lavorando sull'epoca tanti anni, ho capito quanto l'epoca ti aiuta a guardare senza sociologismi la realtà di oggi, no? Allora è come se riesci, tanto noi non siamo così diversi, però è una realtà, quella degli anni 50, più semplice apparentemente da guardare, e poi perché fu, come dire, veramente un archetipo il caso Montesi di quello che poi è accaduto dopo, no? Questo non è un paese semplice per una donna, a mio parere, è proprio una questione culturale dell'Italia, è un paese che ritengo anche pericoloso, ecco, per una ragazza, e vedere, insomma, le immagini di Vilma Montesi, sta ragazza buttata sulla spiaggia a faccia in giù, con le calze tirate giù, insomma, è come gli archetipi, come quelle immagini che rimangono, no? Io sono entrato in contatto con questa storia e ogni volta che vedevo ripetersi questa storia nell'oggi ritornavo a quell'immagine lì. Le immagini servono a questo, a creare, come dire, forma, a dare forma a una memoria, no? E allora, proprio perché, avendo fatto una serie molto lunga sull'epoca, ho imparato quanto l'epoca sia vuoto, come dire, permetta di non guardare a quello che si vede, a un film attraverso i sociologismi, che sono spesso molto semplici, e allora ho pensato che è venuto naturale, ho cominciato a scrivere e non mi sono più fermato. Ecco.
C'è una domanda qui davanti.
Ciao Fulvia.
Io ero anche molto affascinata, diciamo, oltre appunto ovviamente dal gancio con la storia Montesi, però molto da questa decisione che hai preso di ricostruire quell'epoca, quella Cinecittà, quell'immaginario cinematografico, insomma, di quell'Italia, Hollywood sul Tevere, insomma, tutto quello che vediamo lì. È anche molto bella la prima parte con la madre e la sorella. Ecco, io volevo anche, perché ti è venuta voglia di raccontare quello, e su di te quella fascinazione lì, quell'immagine lì del cinema nostro come era stato, che effetto fa e che cosa significa?
Allora, guarda, questa cosa di trovare le ragioni, perché io poi ho sempre fatto adattamenti letterari, perciò la ragione, l'origine delle cose era sempre nelle mani, in un certo senso, dello scrittore prima. Io non so esattamente come tutto questo è successo, questo è successo. Io, ripeto, l'immagine del cadavere di Vilma Montesi era rimasto nella mia memoria, al punto che quando poi mi sono messo a scrivere, forse perché sono abitato tanto tempo con la testa dentro quel tipo di... negli anni 50 avevo, come dire, raccolto tantissime informazioni, immagini, sentimenti, modi di agire, anche le cose più piccole, la ricostruzione storica, insomma, e perciò è venuta fuori questa cosa. Io chiaramente sono uno spettatore di cinema e dunque mi sono anche molto divertito dentro questa storia. Vilma Montesi era una comparsa, voleva fare l'attrice, dunque c'era nella sua storia tutto questo e perciò mi sono divertito anche nell'immaginare, nel ricostruire quel tipo di iconografia proprio. Sai, Cinecittà non è soltanto uno studio cinematografico, nel senso che a parità probabilmente ci sono studi che hanno tecnologia più all'avanguardia, oppure 150 teatri di più, anche se Cinecittà oggi ha le tecnologie all'avanguardia, ma sono magari molto più grandi, no? Però qual è la differenza? La differenza non è soltanto come cade il sole a Cinecittà, non è soltanto la storia che si respira, siamo noi. Io ricordo, giravo il peplum egiziano e vedevo le facce di queste persone in mutande e io le immaginavo che tornavano con la lambretta a casa la sera. Erano uguali. E allora lì pensavo, proprio con Nicola, eravamo lì e dicevo, vedi qual è la differenza? Cinecittà siamo noi. Cioè la differenza fra uno studio cinematografico appunto più impersonale e Cinecittà siamo noi. Siamo noi che facciamo Cinecittà, sono le nostre maestranze, sono le nostre comparse, sono le nostre facce, il nostro atteggiamento, il nostro modo di essere, la nostra anche non Cinecittà, ma anche la nostra cialtroneria, no? Quello che urla, quello che parlo sempre del mondo comparse, eccetera, eccetera. E dunque, insomma, è tutto stato molto naturale, ecco, quello che è successo in questo film.
Lì a destra.
Salve, Pedro Armucci del Giornale. No, mi volevo ricollegare alla domanda su Cinecittà. Senza nulla togliere agli altri produttori, ero incuriosito dal marchio Cinecittà sul film e quindi mi chiedevo l'apporto anche di Cinecittà, non so se Nicola Maccanico vuole... se è la prima volta, non lo so, mi sembra come una delle prime volte, almeno forse una produzione così grande, ecco l'apporto anche... Grazie.
Qui davanti.
Sì, ciao Pedro. Per Cinecittà questo film è una incredibile opportunità e il fatto che sia successo in questo momento secondo me non è nemmeno un caso e soprattutto per noi è stato molto importante dimostrare di essere all'altezza di un progetto così ambizioso e credo che proprio perché Cinecittà siamo noi e Cinecittà è un luogo che va oltre tradizionali studi cinematografici, è stato bello strutturare, collaborare, fare la nostra parte per cercare di fare in modo che il film potesse rappresentarla nella maniera più alta possibile. E quindi ti ringrazio per la domanda, soprattutto perché io voglio ringraziare i produttori, Saverio, perché, ripeto, credo che si può raccontare in ogni modo con le parole Cinecittà, ma le immagini che ci ha regalato e la narrazione che ci regala Saverio la rappresenta proprio nella sua anima. Anima che non è cambiata, sono cambiate le tecnologie, è cambiata l'epoca, ma Cinecittà oggi ha successo perché interpreta quell'anima che è nel film di Saverio.
Allora, c'è una domanda lì, ma mi inserisco un attimo e prima di tornare appunto sull'aspetto produttivo del film volevo chiedere a Rebecca di raccontarci un po' di questa esperienza, di che cosa le ha parlato questa ragazza che in una notte compie un percorso così importante, un viaggio reale e metaforico in qualche modo. Che cosa è stato per te interpretare questo ruolo?
Salve a tutti. Allora, io ho trovato una grande vicinanza tra me e il mio personaggio perché siamo cresciute insieme, lei durante una notte e io durante 2 mesi e mezzo, insomma il periodo delle riprese. E Mimosa è una ragazza ingenua, essenziale e semplice e mi ha colpito molto questo suo lato vero. Non è una ragazza che finge di essere qualcun altro, lei è se stessa e basta. E ovviamente è stata un'esperienza meravigliosa sia lavorare con tutto il cast, mi sono trovata benissimo, e soprattutto con Saverio perché insomma è riuscito a comunicarmi perfettamente quello che voleva da me, dal personaggio e la visione del film, e quindi niente, mi sono divertita. Comunque è stata una grande responsabilità, primo film importante, però insomma sono felice, quindi
Primo film importante, tanto sulle tue spalle, insomma.
Certo, sì.
Allora, c'è una domanda lì.
Buongiorno Valentina D'Amico. Dopo averci fatto assaggiare la magia del cinema nella prima parte del film, quando passiamo dietro le quinte c'è molta meno magia, i personaggi sono quasi tutti, per motivi diversi, piuttosto negativi. Quindi mi chiedevo se è una tua proiezione dell'ambiente cinematografico del passato o se è legato anche un po' a una tua esperienza, non so, è così che vedi l'ambiente in cui lavori?
No, guarda, sinceramente io però non sono d'accordo che sono negativi, nel senso che il gioco, diciamo che è anche un film sugli attori, e che sono secondo me degli eroi, sono i nostri eroi, nel senso che sono quelli che rischiano di più quando si fa un film, sono davanti alla macchina da presa, sono quelli che in un certo senso hanno più da perdere, ecco. E serve un grande coraggio per fare l'attore, però il rischio è quello di essere dipendente dall'immagine dell'altro, che l'altro ha di te, no? E perciò tutti questi attori, in realtà, che tu dici negativi, secondo me sono solo insicuri, che poi nell'incontro con questo personaggio così, come un foglio di carta bianco su cui ognuno di loro può scrivere la sua storia, e scrivendo questa storia piano piano si toglie tutti quei filtri, no? Tra lui e l'altro, che sono quelli in un certo senso che mettiamo perché cerchiamo di rappresentarci come però poi non siamo. E dunque è come se il personaggio di Rebecca è una specie di specchio su cui ognuno poi riflette la verità di sé. E io non credo che il personaggio di Joe Keery sia un personaggio negativo, è semplicemente un attore non consapevole della sua arte, che cerca nel talento degli altri tutte le volte come un segugio di affiancarsi al talento degli altri perché pensa di non averlo, eppure nel film è bravo. Perciò è un'insicurezza. Il personaggio di Lily James, io credo che essere una diva negli anni 50 era un inferno. Cioè io credo che venivano invidiate, amate, però la loro rappresentazione, il loro dovere essere sempre seducenti, ammalianti, fatali, doveva essere micidiale. E dunque anche il personaggio di Lily James, che ha le nevrosi tipiche di chi è sempre sotto l'occhio di bue, perciò sotto lo sguardo di qualcuno, nell'inquadratura finale, quella che ci fa salutare il personaggio, in realtà capisci che è solo ciò che deve fare, ciò che gli è chiesto di essere dal sistema, non quello che lei è veramente. Perciò anche lei si riesce a specchiare, e perciò a specchiare se stessa prima di permettere a Mimosa di specchiarsi in quella specie di porta scorrevole, eccetera. Il personaggio di Dafoe, per esempio, non è per niente negativo, è una specie di Caronte, buono, un uomo che non... quelli che sono negativi sono gli squali da salotto, cioè quelli che secondo me sono i personaggi più negativi non sono gli artisti, sono quelli che stanno intorno agli artisti, sono quelli che appunto che sfruttano, che usano le donne nel caso di questo film come moneta di scambio, sono i predatori, ma non sono artisti, almeno nella maggior parte dei casi non lo sono. Dunque io non ho, anzi io penso che questo sia un mestiere dove ci sono, dove lo scopo è sempre quello di la buona arte la fanno le buone persone, secondo me, e perciò è uno sforzo quello di qualsiasi buon artista di essere, di diventare una buona persona. Dunque non ho affatto l'idea che questo sia un mondo infernale, anzi.
Una domanda lì? Grazie. Saverio, ciao, sono Valerio.
Ciao.
Alla conferenza stampa di presentazione della mostra Alberto Barbera ci precisò anche il tuo budget, che è un budget del tutto inusuale per un film italiano. Quindi volevo capire, sapere che cosa ha rappresentato questo, cioè se hai sentito questa responsabilità, ecco, se ti ha condizionato da ogni punto di vista, ecco, in che modo?
Guarda, questo devo dire c'è una buona dose di incoscienza da parte mia, perché per me un film come Angry Hearts, che costava 500.000 euro, non è diverso da questo, che ne costa molti di più. E poi per arrivare a questo c'è un copione che io ho scritto in maniera totalmente onesta con me stesso, non ho ammiccato, io ho seguito, però era un copione che accoglieva, riusciva, come dire, a convincere le persone, e perciò grazie alla fiducia che queste persone hanno dato al film e a me è venuto fuori questo budget, perché era il modo di raccontare questa storia. Però questa storia del budget è un po' come se fosse, per me, che sono uno che passa da film poverissimi a una serie TV molto importante, oppure a un film del genere, domani potrei fare un altro film, due pinze e una tenaglia, come si... Non è una cosa che sinceramente non riesco strategicamente a pensare, ora faccio il film grande per il pubblico, poi ne faccio uno più piccolo per me. Hanno sempre tutti lo stesso processo, diciamo, creativo, ecco. E poi ci sono storie che hanno bisogno di più mezzi e storie che invece, come nel caso di Angry Hearts o di Private, o insomma, che sono film che hanno proprio una necessità più immediata, una troupe più leggera, e perciò devono adattarsi al budget di cui hanno bisogno. Insomma, io davvero questo del budget non è un tema per me. Infatti in un film americano non lo chiederemmo mai, no? Facciamo attenzione a questo, mentre invece, come capita agli italiani, diventa un film al grande budget. Dunque dobbiamo, secondo me, superarla questa
E prima di dare la parola a Gloria volevo continuare su questo discorso produttivo per sapere invece insomma, il punto di vista dei produttori su questa avventura e su questa fiducia di cui ha parlato Saverio. Che esperienza è stata dal vostro punto di vista per voi?
Allora, innanzitutto appunto io qui rappresento il gruppo Fremantle, c'è Andrea Scrosati, Lorenzo Angarussa produce con me, Paolo è qui e Nicola e Cinecittà che hanno fatto parte sin dall'inizio di questa compagine. Sì, io penso che bisogna un po' superare questa cosa. Noi italiani siamo innanzitutto molto bravi a usare le nostre risorse, perché noi siamo ancora capaci di creare spettacolo usando al meglio rispetto a spesso l'industria americana quello che abbiamo a disposizione, perché non siamo abituati ad averlo, e quindi non facciamo, diciamo, operazioni sfrenate o fuori, diciamo, controllo. Poi sappiamo le cose, di cosa hanno bisogno e cerchiamo di fare il massimo. Vorrei dire che ci sono, magari voi quando vedete delle grandi scene, spettacoli, immaginate subito così, ma ci sono anche molti film italiani che vengono girati in molte più settimane di queste, molto meno spettacolari, che hanno budget molto alti, a cui voi questa domanda non la fate semplicemente perché non lo vedete sullo schermo. E quindi, diciamo, l'importante secondo me è come sappiamo usare le risorse e come sappiamo, perché ci sembra ovvio che oggi lo spettatore della sala, a cui noi teniamo moltissimo, e qui abbiamo Rai Cinema e il Gruppo Fremantle che per mestieri diversi hanno sostenuto la sala in tempi tremendi, ci tengo a dirlo. Noi abbiamo fatto uscire i film durante i Covid, la Rai ha fatto uscire durante i Covid perché crediamo nella sala e nel pubblico e rispettiamo talmente la sala e il pubblico che sappiamo che quel pubblico ha bisogno, per tornare alla sala, anche di un grande spettacolo, di un grande intrattenimento e di un grande cuore. E questo è il nostro dovere, questo che noi facciamo con grande senso di responsabilità.
Ma sì, chiaramente a me piace molto quello che ha detto Saverio sul fatto che noi stavamo qui insieme con Angry Arts, per cui mi ricordo un film con un budget piccolissimo, eppure che ha fatto un percorso anche qui al festival meraviglioso, come ricordiamo. Quindi sì, ogni film ha le sue esigenze. È chiaro che siamo in un momento particolare, per cui laddove un film ha bisogno di un impianto produttivo come questo, naturalmente di un livello più importante, dobbiamo cercare tutti noi, produttori in primis, di assecondare le esigenze del film. Quindi il budget è al servizio del film e non è il contrario. Se posso aggiungere una cosa personale, ringrazio Saverio in particolare, ma chiaramente anche Mario, perché era stato fatto un patto molti anni fa. Qualora lui fosse tornato al cinema avrebbe fatto un film con Rai Cinema, quindi mi fa particolarmente piacere riaccoglierlo nella nostra squadra di Rai Cinema, di averlo riaccolto nella nostra squadra di Rai Cinema e 01. E poi la cosa che mi ha colpito molto di questo film è proprio Cinecittà, poi anche per motivi personali, io l'ho frequentata da bambino, il fatto che Cinecittà è un attore del film, non è uno studio, no? È proprio un personaggio. E questo secondo me dal nostro punto di vista, ma non solo, ma dal punto di vista internazionale, perché Cinecittà è uno dei marchi più conosciuti al mondo italiani, insomma questo mi ha colpito positivamente ancora di più, e credo che possa essere uno degli elementi, diciamo, di, chiamiamolo visibilità, diciamo, non voglio dire altre parole, insomma, di visibilità internazionale del film.
Sì, arriva.
Grazie. Saverio, il film racconta molto bene la storia di un grande sogno, il cinema come grande sogno. Negli anni 50 c'era solo quello per sognare, per una ragazza, per emanciparsi, per avere un posto nel mondo, eccetera. Oggi, secondo te, il cinema mantiene questo fascino di grande sogno, oppure la televisione, il mondo degli influencer ha un po' intaccato questa priorità, questo primato del cinema? Grazie.
Ciao Gloria. Guarda, questa è, diciamo, una cosa a cui io non sono proprio capacissimo di rispondere, perché io appartengo ancora al Novecento, dunque avendo il piede lì, essendomi formato, diciamo, il nuovo secolo, quello che non riesco, dunque per me ha ancora centralità il cinema, e io lo vedo anche con i miei figli, ce l'ha anche per loro. Nel senso che poi il guardare, il formarsi attraverso le immagini esiste da sempre, è proprio, come dire, quasi primitiva come tipo di rapporto, proprio con la crescita, con l'imparare come funziona il mondo, eccetera. È chiaro che oggi ci sono le piattaforme, ci sono molte più cose, ci sono molte serie, però il cinema, anche lavorando su una serie, devo dire che ha quel fuoco in più, quella spinta propulsiva che anche le serie più belle, quelle più, diciamo, che sono rimaste più impresse, hanno in una dilatazione che non ha quell'immediatezza, diciamo, del cinema, ecco. Perciò io non so se per un ragazzo di 15 anni il cinema ha la centralità che aveva per Mimosa nel 50, probabilmente no, come però è giusto che sia, ma questo non significa che quel tipo di esperienza non rimanga ancora oggi, secondo me, quella che dà più soddisfazione, quella che permette di andare più lontano, poi dopo, proprio alla persona. Imparare a guardare il cinema è veramente imparare a guardare se stessi, appunto, parli di sogno, ma il cinema è uno di quei luoghi dove che dà, come dire, che dà forma alle immagini, anche quelle più con i contorni più sbiaditi, più difficili da guardare, più interiori, e di conseguenza è uno di quegli insegnamenti che secondo me che ti porta più lontano, ecco, questo. E poi sarà retorico dirlo, ma è chiaro che l'esperienza del cinema sul grande schermo in una sala buia è come chiudere gli occhi per dormire. Dormire con gli occhi aperti è più complicato, ecco. Dunque invece in una sala buia è un modo proprio, è il modo in cui si deve guardare il cinema.
Allora, nelle sale il 14 dicembre con 01 Distribution. Grazie a tutti.
Grazie a voi.
Grazie.